kiddos will get to stay in here. They'll hang with us, but they get to help us with a game everybody can play in just a little bit. But going to be looking at, we were looking at characters from the Christmas story, and now we're going to kind of stay on that vein, moving past the Christmas story there. But looking at some Bible characters. I'm going to start with some lesser known ones, maybe. You can let me know if over the next few weeks are these the people that you're like, no, I know everything about that person, or who in the world are you even talking about? You can feel free to weigh in on that. But, I would think, Peter, Paul, David, some of them, Mary, some of them are the more well-known, so these will be a little lesser known. Looking at this idea, and I don't mean any insult, any down put on these people at all, but looking at the idea of nobodies that God turned into somebodies for him. Really, nobodies as in lesser known characters that the world would view as nobodies that God used to do something special. Tonight, we're looking at a lady. We might look at a lady again next week, a woman again next week, and not any insult at all to really either of these ladies, but they were insulted just culturally back then. Women looked down on in some horrible ways, not by Jewish people who were following the law and following, God, but women were very, very much diminished in their value, very much looked down on. And wouldn't you know it, we see a woman here doing amazing things for God, and even in a leadership position. We're going to look at Deborah tonight, and how Deborah from the Bible will be in Judges 4, if you want to turn there, how Deborah in Judges 4 shows us how to be a biblical influencer, even though women were often put down and even overlooked in ancient culture. How to be a biblical influencer. So maybe you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm not a nobody. Great, use everything you've got for God. Maybe you're like, I feel like a nobody. There's no way God could use me. Yeah, you can. Absolutely. Do you know who God uses the least? People that think they're somebody. And they get so focused on, it's all about me. It's all about me. Those are usually the people that God really can't use them because they're too busy getting stuck on themselves. So, with this idea of being an influencer, having a godly biblical influence, thought we'd play a little game as we often do. You can participate. This is very easy. Most of you won't even have to move around. Make the kids move if we need to. But I want to see if you can influence another person by getting them to smile. So this is the no smiles contest. So no smiles yet. Some of you are failing already. Some of you, I said smile, and you're just so happy. It's just bursting out of you. I like it. But if you want to play, kids certainly can. But kids, you can get these adults involved if they don't automatically. But you stare at somebody. First one to smile loses. We'll see how you do. Ready? Go. You got to stare at somebody. I could probably do this over a distance very well. All right, hey kids, why don't you go find one of these adults that doesn't have anybody near them and get them to participate? This game either results in some good smiles or some of the ugliest glares I've ever seen. It's are we calling that one a tie? Oh, okay. See, I say I usually lose this game because I'm just so happy. My wife's shaking her head. I don't know why. Well, the grandpa is, not too worn out today. I think he said he taught one class, so. Mom, were those kindergartners pretty good today after the days off? I played this with teenagers. They're making some of the weirdest faces. They're not smiling, but they're making some of the goofiest faces you ever see. All right, one more competition if you've got time for it. They don't all end in a bear hug. I like it. River, did you win? No? That's okay. It means you're happy. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't know. I think he's saying you smiled first. Rematch after church if you want, Brooklyn. Anyway. Wow. Silly, simple, fun game, but just kind of influencing the idea of, again, not even really the point of the message, but can't even a smile influence a good bit? And you might be like, well, if I have a smile, it just always looks fake and plastic. You don't have to be fake. You ever seen someone who's smiling with almost everything they are, not just with their mouth? But man, something as simple as that. We can be a biblical influencer. We can make a difference. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, not where we're at mainly tonight, But verse 26 says, "For you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called." Not that they're not invited to trust Christ and be used in his plan, but most of them don't ever bother. Verse 27, "But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty." I love the expression, God's commandments are God's enablements. God's commandments are God's enablements. Maybe you've heard it put, where God guides, God provides. So I'm not trying to say, hey, this is only a message for people that almost look down on themselves as nobodies, but maybe other people don't make you feel like you could do something big for God. Maybe you yourself kind of struggle with, can I, really? Or maybe you're like, okay, I don't really struggle with that, but how can I make a difference for God? Well, Deborah and many others give us some great flesh and blood examples there. Again, women often disrespected, seldom in positions of leadership in the ancient world. And even while doing amazing things that we'll look at for God, others really overshadow Deborah in many ways. But none of that stopped Deborah from being an influencer for God. First of all, as we look into Judges 4, we'll just get a few verses of background here. Verse 1, it says, "And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord." Maybe you're familiar with Judges. Kind of a depressing book in some ways, right? It's exciting. You got Samson and you got, all of these dramatic stories and Gideon and some amazing, amazing things. It'd be a really fun book to preach through. We'll have to do that sometime soon. We'll see. But just kind of this cycle of they do right for God, then they get comfortable, then they fall into sin or jump headfirst into sin. And then God sends them, a judge, someone to bring them out of it, and then just kind of hit repeat. That's almost the book of Judges. It's just cycle on repeat. It says, "And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead." The previous judge died. They go right back to their old ways. Verse 2, "And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles." So God loved them so much that he would bring whatever needed to happen to bring them back to him. So it really is a sign of God's love. Do you ever start to think that they wish they would have listened to God a little sooner? Yeah, I think they wished that. Doing that, not so much, unfortunately. Verse 3, "And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, for he," the Sisera and the host there, "had 900 chariots of iron." Again, you could easily picture 900 tanks if you want, but again, best weaponry of the day. "And 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, she judged Israel at that time." So right away, we can see, maybe you've heard this before, there's three kinds of people. Those that make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what's happening. Those who make things happen, I think that'll be Deborah. Those who watch things happen, and those who kind of scratch their heads and stand around on the sideline and wonder what in the world is happening. Thankfully, with God's help, as we are a part of his plan, we can be people who help make things happen. As we look into verse 5, Deborah couldn't change the whole nation politically, really yet. But as a judge, as a prophetess there, she did make a difference in individuals' lives every day. Verse 5 says it this way, "And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah." There you go, you can have your own palm tree maybe, I don't know. "Between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for judgment." So here she is judging. She's helping. She's, with God's wisdom there, she's following God's leading. Hey, you're right and you're wrong. And, hey, no, this is the decision. This is what we're going to do. And she's just helping almost on an individual basis. She's going to be able to help in kind of a national way shortly. But here she is just serving God faithfully, making a difference in individuals' lives. Maybe you could think, hey, I'm not effective, I'm not making a difference, I'm not that popular, I'm not that important, but are you making a difference in the lives of people around you? I've seen God, again, use something as simple as a smile to make a huge impact. I know some people that have just gone out of their way to give me a kind word, a kind note, you can relate as well, and it's made a huge impact. Maybe you're like, hey, I'm trying to serve God, but it's just passing out a tract. It's just being kind. It's just inviting someone to church. It's just living like Jesus at my job, even though no one else is. It's just living out my faith, even around unsafe family members. It's not just. God can take those things that we can often look at as small and do some of the biggest things with them. I hate to use any job as an example because the whole point is there are no pointless jobs, but janitors are often not really given the credit they deserve. Hard workers, absolutely, have all the respect in the world. And janitors have been some of the greatest examples in my life, honestly, simply because they always do what's needed, even if no one's noticing. Now, sometimes a lot of preachers will like to use garbage collectors as that as well. All the respect in the world for that. It's a hard-working job and also really smelly. Some might like this time of year because you can't smell trash right now because it's too cold. That might help. I can remember hearing about years ago, McDonald's had the little peel-off. I think it was a Monopoly game. And if you got the right combination of pieces, you could win all this money. Well, one garbage collector saw one that hadn't been peeled off, a cup there, and peeled it off, won like $100,000. So, I mean, you never know. Faithfulness pays off, I guess, for his job. Kind of the classic job about, hey, I can't make a difference for everybody, but I can help one, is a guy was walking along the beach one day, and warmer weather than this. Here we are talking beach, palm trees. Maybe you're just already starting to warm up and don't want to leave and go back out into the frozen tundra. But he was walking along the beach, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of starfish everywhere that you could see that had gotten washed up in a big storm. As far as I know, true story. And so he started just picking them up, tossing them back in. Sun was going to dry them out. They were all going to die. There were way more than what he could get, though. Another guy comes walking up, probably should have offered to help, but he says, come on, you idiot, what are you doing? There's no way you can save all the starfish. There's too many. Again, he probably should have helped. But he said, there's no way, what are you even doing? Why are you bothering? You can't save them all. Can't make a difference. And he picks up another starfish, flings it back into the ocean, said, made a difference in that one's life. Made a difference in that one's life. I can get overwhelmed thinking 8 billion or so people on Earth. I like numbers. I'm a math guy. I can't wrap my mind around 8 billion people on this earth. Then you look at the percentages of those who tend to have trusted Jesus as Savior. It gets depressing. To the best of my knowledge, I'll never preach to millions. Pray for me if I ever do. I'll probably panic. But, I don't, as far as I know, that'll never be my calling. That's perfectly fine. I might not, and you might not ever be able to witness to, share your faith, live in front of, preach to millions or even billions of people. But we can make a difference in that one's life, in that one's life, in that one's life. And I'd be willing to bet for most of you, someone just popped into your head. Coworker, family member, friend, neighbor. Maybe it's not that they need Jesus. Maybe they're a Christian. You're like, yeah, they need a little encouragement. You read depression statistics, and that's downright depressing, isn't it? How many people struggle? And honestly, worked with teens for years and years and years and years. I've had more adults come to me saying, hey, can you pray for me? I'm struggling with some anxiety, some depression. I'm really discouraged dealing with this. It's not just teenagers, it's adults. And we can think, okay, how can we help people? Probably not millions at a time. We can make a difference in one person's life, in one person's life, in one person's life. Sometimes the most encouraging thing for fellow Christians is just to see you living out your faith. Let's be willing to do that. Deborah was just willing to faithfully. Judge in Israel, don't you think she probably had some really pointless days of what it seemed like? Do you think those Israelites ever came up and asked for Judge Deborah to make some decisions about things that they probably should have just handled themselves? Probably. Ask Glenn Mance about some of the decisions he's had to be involved in. I guarantee you some of them have been pretty stinking pointless. Absolutely. But just faithfully serving, we can make a difference. Well, next we looked at Deborah really wasn't the military leader, but the military leader succeeded only with her help. She wasn't the military leader, but the military leader, we'll see, succeeded only with her help. Back to Judges 4, verse 6. It says, and she sent and called Barak. I've always pronounced that Barak. Recent political days, if you say Barak, that's okay. I've always said Barak, and that just seems simpler at this point. Not the point of the message, but called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali. I think I got that one right. You can debate me later if you want. But and said unto him, hath not the Lord God of Israel commanded, saying, go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with thee 10,000 of the men, or of the 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun. And I will draw unto thee to the river Kishon, Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into thine hand. It's guaranteed victory. Going to draw them all right there. Going to draw his chariots. I bet you Barak was like, God's going to do what? going to gather all of these thousands and thousands of troops and all these 900 chariots. This is a good thing that he's going to gather all the people right there. But many of you know what's going to happen. A lot of it even alluded to in the next chapter where it's Deborah and Barak singing a song praising God for what he did. He sends rain. The chariot tires, most likely wheels, it should say, get bogged down. The chariots are actually a curse, not a blessing. And God comes through in some ways, in some amazing ways. Verse 8, and Barak said unto her, if thou wilt go with me, then I will go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go. And she said, I will surely go with thee, notwithstanding the journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor, for the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And you might be thinking, Deborah's like, yeah, it's going to be all about me. No, she knew it wasn't about her. I've read this recently. Anybody name me the lady that is going to end up killing Sisera? Addison? JL. They get to do kind of a fun Adventures in Odyssey. Not terribly gory, even though it's a pretty gory story that the girls like to listen to there. It says, and Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh, and Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite, which is of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, he had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent in the plain of Zanim, which is by Kadesh. And they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor. We'll come back to the battle in just a moment. And again, those 900 chariots and the amazing plan God had. Barak, I believe him. I don't think he would have gone up without Deborah. He said so. I don't believe he would have. I wonder who's one push, one nudge, one encouragement from following God's plan for their lives if we'll just help. Maybe it is go with them. I've heard some people are adamant, don't invite someone to church. Invite them to church, tell them what time you're going to pick them up, tell them you're going to have donuts and coffee in the car, and all of that. Maybe that's how God leads you. I come to church, but I'll take the donuts and coffee, that's fine. But at the same time, there are so many people that are they want to do right, but they need the right help, the right nudge, the right push. And again, I mentioned about inviting someone to church. That can be, recovering from an addiction, and they're one nudge, one push away from it. Maybe you know someone, you're like, yeah, they really need to go get some help. And they ain't going unless you go with them. Who knows what it might look like. Next, we see that Sisera was a somebody. This is the enemy general there. Was a somebody who became a nobody by trying to be somebody without God. So we're looking at so-called nobodies that most people look down on that God used to do something special. Well, Sisera here was a somebody in the world's eyes, who became a nobody trying to be somebody without God. We'll read several verses here starting in Judges 4:13. It says, and Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him, from Harosheth of the Gentiles unto the river of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, up, for this is the day in which the Lord hath delivered Sisera into thine hand. Don't you love influencers who are willing to say, that's a whole lot of problem, and it's actually a good thing because God has the solution. Some people can only see problems. That might have been Barak. I don't know. Deborah, she's like, hey, this is a great thing. She sees only solutions. I love it. Is not the Lord gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. Verse 15. And the Lord discomfited, or whooped, Sisera and all his chariots and all his host with the edge of the sword. No, I don't think you'll find the word whooped in like a Bible dictionary. When I see discomfited, I think whooped. Anyway, with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted off his chariot and fled away on his feet. And again, that's basically all of the battle that we see. You can read chapter 5, does talk about some, mentions water, mentions rain a lot. I believe God sent quite a rainstorm, muddied everything up. All of a sudden, these chariots are stuck in the mud. They're no good. That's why we even see Sisera losing the battle, get off his chariot and run. Verse 16, but Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles. And all the hosts of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. God gave us amazing victory. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, heard him mentioned a bit ago, for there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera, a lot of you know where this is going, and said unto him, turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle, basically you can think of a blanket, And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water, for I am thirsty. And she opened not water, a bottle of milk, and gave him drink, and covered him. Great hostess, right? And again, he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there a man here? That thou shalt say, No. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent, and took an hammer in her hand, and went softly unto him, and smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground. For he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. I can't imagine being that asleep. I'm just saying. But yeah, he stayed asleep. Anyway, verse 22. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said unto him, Come, and I will show thee the man whom thou seekest. And when he came into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered and prevailed against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. Now, we're not looking in a whole lot of details there about the battle. Again, maybe you want to see Jael act that one out for you in heaven. Maybe you really don't. I don't know. Maybe not. A little violent, obviously. And I think she's picking a side. Maybe she saw that the victory was won. Maybe her faith was always in the one true God. We don't really know a whole lot about her. But at the same time, we see Sisera thinking, my army and these chariots, and then they end up being the exact thing that undoes him. He was a somebody who became a nobody because he was trying to do something without God. So let's go back to Deborah for just a little bit. Because God doesn't need our position. He doesn't need our power or our money or our talent. So you might be wondering, why does he ask us to give him those things? Well, because he wants us to be able to be a part of what he's doing. What a privilege. Next, as we look at it, before we come back to Judges 4, I want to look at this idea. Influencers focus on impact, not credit. Influencers focus on impact, not credit. You don't have to turn there, but Hebrews 11, often called the Hall of Faith, many, that'd be great preaching as well. Many great men and women of the faith who you can tell their faith is deep because of what they do. Just amazing things. Verse 11, or chapter 11, verse 32, it says, And what shall I say? What shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and of Samson, and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets. Some great people named there, weren't there? You notice who was named from Judges 4? Barak. You notice who wasn't named? Deborah. And I don't know, but I tend to think she wouldn't have worried about it too much. Because whether she really would have wanted her name in Hebrews 11 or not, looking, if God would have let her look all those years forward to when that was written, she was an influencer who was focused on impact, making a difference for God, not on the credit. It's been said, it's amazing what you can get done when no one cares who gets the credit. And it's so easy for us, again, in our families, in a church, in any setting, to get so focused on who's going to get the credit. You see athletes once in a while, middle school, high school level on into the pros, run over, and they care more about the stat sheet than how their team's doing. And then you see others who are just glad to make a difference. One guy, won't talk too much college football, but one guy, Graham Mertz, transferred 2 years ago to the Florida Gators from Wisconsin. And he was never going to be the absolute superstar. He was never going to win the Heisman. Very solid quarterback, got injured this year, went down. He's hopefully going to get drafted. He's going to try. But even in his announcement that he was going to make to go to the draft, and just everywhere, he came in to make a difference. He got season-ending injury. He ran back and stepped on the grass and tore his ACL. It was the weirdest thing in the world. Nobody touched him. It was, craziest thing. He's like pounding the ground mad that he got hurt. But before he got hurt, he was contributing to the team. After he got hurt, every game he's down there on the sidelines helping his replacement, who is probably going to be a superstar next year, investing in the team every way he could. Unless the announcer said so, we didn't know about it. But he was so focused on the team, wasn't worried about himself. We should be so focused on the cause of Christ, we're not worried about getting the credit. We're not worried about people noticing. Deborah, not even mentioned in the Hall of Faith there, but her impact and influence outlived her in so many ways. We'll get just a little further here, just a bit into chapter 5. As we look at chapter 5, verse 1 of Judges, God won the victory, and Deborah's song of praise has impacted, you could say billions of people who have read the Bible. I'll read just a little bit of it. We're not going far. But Judges 5, verse 1, Then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, saying, so after they've won the battle, Praise ye the Lord for the avenging of Israel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O ye kings, give ear, O ye princes. Even I, will sing unto the Lord. I will sing praise to the God of Israel. Story is told of a converted Hindu, so a religiously Hindu person who got saved. He said this in an address to a bunch of his fellow countrymen. He said, I am by birth of an insignificant and contemptible caste. Many of you would know about the caste system in Hinduism. So low that if Brahman, their false deity there, should chance to touch me, he must go and bathe in the Ganges River for the purpose of purification. And yet God, real God, the one true God, has been pleased to call me not merely to the knowledge of the gospel, but to the high office of teaching it to others. This converted Christian says, my friends, do you know the reason of God's conduct? It is this. If God had selected one of you learned Brahmins, one of you fancy people, one of you highly talented, educated people, and made you the preacher, when you were successful in making converts, bystanders would have said, it is the amazing learning of the Brahmin and his great weight of character that were the cause. But now, when anyone is converted by my instrumentality, no one thinks of ascribing any of the praise to me, and God, as is his due, has all the glory. He was saying, hey, there's nothing in me, but the fact that God is using me means everybody gets to point to him. What is it about your life? What is it about mine that people can look at and say, that's not them, that's God in them. That's not their power, that's God's power working in them. And you're like, I'm not sure if there is anything. Spend a little time tonight, go home, on the drive home, watch the snow drifting, and ask God, okay, what God-sized things do you want me to use me in? What do you want me to do that I can't do on my own, that it's going to be you, so that everybody will know it was you, and I just get to enjoy being a part of it. Lastly, let's look at this. Back to Judges 5, looking way ahead down to verse 31. Deborah couldn't make the Israelites choose God's way forever. That's an individual choice. But she could influence those around her while she was alive. Judges 5, verse 31 says, So let all thine enemies perish, O Lord, but let them that love him be as the sun when he goeth forth in his might. So kind of the end of the song there. And the land had rest 40 years. Should have been 400, 4,000. They would have just simply followed God. God would have had no need to bring in other judges, no need to bring in other captors. Her influence lasted during her lifetime, and she made a difference where she could. It's amazing to think how far a little influence can go. You ever drop pebbles in a pond? Look at the ripples. Again, I'm a simple-minded guy. That communicates to me. Again, we were up a few weeks ago to Cowan's Gap. That was really fun to throw pebbles into the lake. They usually didn't go in. It was frozen. It made one of the coolest sounds I've ever heard in my life. It was fun. But they say that there could be a big enough tsunami that it could go from, I believe it's a part in the coast of Africa. There's a cliff that if these rocks come down in just the wrong way, it's going to flood much of the east coast of the United States. That influence could go over there. They say the largest tsunami wave ever recorded was in Alaska in 1958. Claimed 5 lives, unfortunately, but it was 1,700 feet tall. It was in Lituya Bay. Don't think there's video existing, but you can Google it and find out about it. A quiet fjord in Alaska. After an earthquake rumbled 13 miles away, this massive tremor triggered around 30.6 million cubic meters of rock to fall 3,000 feet into Lituya Glacier, causing a torrent of displaced water to raise up and form a monstrous wave, which miraculously only killed 5 people, but still tragic for them. If I'm not mistaken, it took a boat from the bay out into the ocean over a small mountain. Well, a hill, at least. And I believe the person in the boat survived, if I'm not mistaken. But it's amazing. You look at the impact of rocks going there. You think of dropping even a pebble in, and the ripples go out in every direction. Simple illustration, but our influence can carry so far if we'll be willing. Deborah was willing. She was faithful. She was an influencer. Really, she came to a place and made it better. She allowed God to use her anyway that God wanted to. You can look at the story, and that's pretty much everything we know about her. Some days were easy, no doubt. Some days were hard. Some days she was involved in a battle doing something big. Other days just faithfully serving. For us, people really do need your help, your encouragement, your influence. It may not seem like much at some times, but with God behind you, it travels farther than you may ever know and can make a bigger difference than you may ever realize until you get to heaven. Are we willing to influence people for the cause of Christ? Let's pray. God, thank you for using us. Thank you that whether most people look at us and say that's a nobody or that's a somebody or anywhere in between, it's not really even about that. Maybe we have the most, maybe we have the least. If we'll just be faithful to you, you'll use us. Thank you for the big things you are doing. There's a lost and dying world all around us, and there are fellow Christians that need encouragement and strength and help, just like we do. And I pray that we will be your hands and feet, that we will influence people for you. She was a prophetess and a judge. You have different roles for each of us. May we faithfully live those out today, tomorrow, this week, and beyond. May we allow you to use us to make ripples all around us, to make a difference, to make people's lives better. And may people look at us and know that you are the one behind us, that we're doing things in your power, your strength, and may it be things that you get all the glory and honor for. Well, thank you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.